We officially kick off week 6 tonight with Thursday Night Football. That does not even seem possible that we're already to that point, but another pretty mediocre week in terms of picks for week 5, 8-6 record, bringing us to an overall of 49-29. That's about 63%. I'm hoping for 70% on the year, so definitely gotta buckle down and start getting some more of these right. As for some week 5 storylines, I want to start with the Bears. Not only did they get a win, this is 2 weeks in a row where Justin Fields has actually looked good. They beat the Commanders 40-20. They had a commanding lead, no pun intended. The Commanders kinda sorta made a comeback, got it close. The Bears get the ball back, another DJ Moore touchdown, and that pretty much seals the game. I will be very interested to see what the Bears turn into down the road, but they have been showing more signs of life than I expected out of them. That leaves only one winless team, and that is the Panthers. I also wanted to mention the Jags over in London. So they stayed in London for an additional week. They played the Falcons and then the Bills. They won both games, and the question was, would there be an advantage, or a big enough advantage, to staying in London for an extra week to be notable? And I think the way the team started really was kind of visible, and you hate to be the Bills in that situation. It's kind of an experimental situation for maybe down the line teams in London. That could be a deciding factor in terms of playoff seeding, and the Jags get another win over there across the pond. Speaking of AFC and playoff seeding, this one probably not going to the playoffs. The Patriots. That's, 72-3 through their last 2 games. Mac Jones throws another pick 6. I picked the Patriots to win this game, didn't pick them to beat the Cowboys. But I thought they would kind of bounce back and have a good game against the Saints, and it was the opposite. A missed field goal, and just nothing from that team. I just didn't expect that. Really curious to see where they end up. If they end up picking high in this next draft, maybe they get a good quarterback, maybe they turn things around, but this was the furthest thing from what I expected. With Bill O'Brien coming in, I thought they'd have a good offense. They don't have a good much of anything right now. And finally, on the opposite end of the spectrum, the 49ers. Not only are they the class of the NFC, I think right now they're the class of the NFL. 42-10 over the Cowboys. The Cowboys were at least perceived to be one of the best teams in the NFL, potentially fringe top 5. Not sure they're still perceived in that same general area. They've lost to the Cardinals now, and then they got smoked by the Niners. I have just been blown away by how well Brock Purdy has played, his decision making, how quickly he's getting the ball out. It's really tough to beat a team with an elite defense to begin with. When you've got an offense that makes very little mistakes, has so many skill players, and has a quarterback that's dishing it out to all these players, that makes for a really, really good team, and they're going to be fun to watch throughout the year. But on that note, let's get into the Thursday night matchup and kick off our Week 6 picks. Broncos at Chiefs gets us kicked off here in Week 6. The Broncos have not won in Arrowhead since 2015. For those of you that are keeping track at home, that is the last time the Broncos won a Super Bowl. This is not a matchup that favors the Broncos at all, coming off another loss, a loss to the Jets, in which they were able to keep the game close, had a chance to go down and win it at the end, and then the strip sack of Russell Wilson returned for a touchdown pretty much turned up the lights on any kind of Broncos comeback. The Chiefs, on the other hand, kind of starting to find their footing. Close scare at the end of the game against the Vikings. Potential pass interference, no call. Then L'Jarius Sneed takes his helmet off. That's a no call. Lots of questions about the officiating in that one, but even still, the Chiefs seem to just be building momentum. I think the only thing that stands in their way are injuries. Kelsey's got another knee issue, or potentially just re-aggravated the same knee. He has not played nearly as many snaps as he typically does even prior to that. And while that's all going on, the receiving core may be starting to find a little bit of a foothold of their own. So got the Chiefs winning this one and extending that streak of wins in Arrowhead against the Broncos for another year. Moving to 9:30 a.m. Eastern kickoff for another game played over in London. Ravens at Titans. A huge rivalry from the early 2000s. The days of Eddie George and Ray Lewis. Of course, Steve McNair played quarterback for both teams. This is an interesting matchup because the Ravens could easily be 5-0. A giveaway game to the Colts, another game given away to the Steelers, I think 7 or 8 drops in that game, just a mess at wide receiver, versus the Titans, who have been up and down so much that it is difficult to determine which Titans team is going to show up. So I think consistency-wise, while both teams have struggled there, the Ravens have shown more consistency, and with this complete schedule change-up, going over to London and playing a game over there, I just feel like John Harbaugh is going to have his team more ready and more motivated than Mike Vrabel. Both good coaches, I like them both. I just think the Ravens have more talent, and they're going to be more motivated to bounce back and get a win. So, taking the Ravens in London at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. So on to the 1 o'clock games, Panthers at Dolphins. The only winless team remaining in the NFL in the Panthers. Bryce Young has certainly struggled. He's had his bright moments for sure, but plenty of stuff to still clean up. There was that kind of awkward press conference moment with Frank Reich where it kind of sounded like he was maybe implying that he wanted CJ Stroud, but David Tepper wanted to get Bryce Young involved in the football decisions, of course, as the owner. And then the Dolphins, outside of the game against the Bills, their offenses look just about unstoppable. Now, Devon Achane has a knee injury. They've been kind of weirdly vague about what's going on there. Not sure that's a great sign for him, but Raheem Mostert's going to fill that spot nicely. He's still got over 5 yards per carry, and I just think the way this Dolphins offense is playing, it just doesn't bode well for Bryce Young and the Panthers. I think the Dolphins get a lead early, and I think they hang on to it. Moving to Saints at Texans. Both these teams have surprised me thus far this year. The Saints are 3-2, coming off that big win against the Patriots. Shutout win, 34-0. And the Texans, while they did lose to the Falcons in somewhat surprising fashion, CJ Stroud led the team down the field, scored a go-ahead touchdown, and Desmond Ridder, to his credit, went back, led the team on a game-winning field goal drive, and made some legit NFL throws. And we'll get to the Falcons actually in the next game. This is a tough pick for me. I like both teams. I like where both teams are headed. I think I'm going to go with the Saints. I was leaning towards the Texans in this one because I've been so impressed with CJ Stroud, but I like the Saints secondary. I think that makes it a little bit tougher on Stroud. And the Saints, maybe they keep this thing rolling. Gonna go with them to get the win, switching this one up. The gut feeling picks the last couple of weeks have not gone well, so hopefully that's different here. And I mentioned the Falcons. The Commanders are visiting the Falcons, coming off a 20-point loss to the Bears on Thursday Night Football last week. Not something I expected to see. I thought they had good momentum. They took the Eagles to overtime. Could have maybe won it in regulation had they gone for 2, but that's neither here nor there. The Falcons, on the other hand, they just keep on winning these games that they manage to keep it close, and they make enough plays, whether it's through the running game, whether it's Bijan Robinson doing some insane basketball crossover-like maneuver to get into the end zone. They're just winning these tough games, and I think this is going to be another one. We saw what Justin Fields and the Bears offense looked like against the Commanders. I don't know that we'll see as many fireworks out of the Falcons, but I think we see enough. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think they're going to go to 4-2 after they had dropped 2 in a row and it was looking like they needed to move on to Heineke at quarterback. Maybe Desmond Ridder still has a shot here. I think they win this game. Speaking of quarterback play, the Colts are visiting the Jags at maybe the worst time possible. If you haven't heard, Anthony Richardson has just been placed on IR with a shoulder injury. He's going to miss at least 4 games because of that. And the Colts haven't won in Jacksonville since 2014. We're beginning to approach a decade of losing to a team that hasn't been that good for most of that decade in their home stadium. I don't know that bodes well for them. I really like Gardner Minshew as a backup quarterback. He has played really well in that system. Obviously, he was Shane Steichen's backup in Philadelphia when he was the offensive coordinator there. So he has familiarity with this system. I think that's a good thing. But the Jags have also looked good. They're coming off a 2-game win streak in London. Now, the travel back may play a factor here. But again, that's just a long time of dominance in their home stadium against one particular team. Hard to bet against that. Gonna go with the Jags to beat the Colts again in Jacksonville. Now, this one definitely has my attention. Seahawks at Bengals. The Bengals offense finally started to look a little bit more like themselves from the prior 2 years, thanks in large part to a huge day by Ja'Marr Chase, 3 touchdowns on the day. That was against the Cardinals, and again, the Cardinals are better than a lot of us expected. And at one time, the Cardinals even had the lead in that game. I think the Seahawks are just a better team than the Cardinals, and I think I'm going to lean towards them in this game. Geno Smith has pretty much picked up where he left off last year, actually picked up where he left off around week 14 or so when he started to fall off at the end of last year. He has looked good. Kenneth Walker definitely adds some dimension to that offense. Their receiving threats are real, and their defense has looked better than the last couple of years, which I think is maybe the biggest factor here. They've got a couple of good corners. I think that makes it tough on Ja'Marr Chase. I believe T. Higgins is still out, so Tyler Boyd coming in there as their wide receiver 2. Trent Irwin probably going to get more playing time again this week. I like the Seahawks in this one on the road against the Bengals. Bengals going to 2-4 would be tough. That's something they no doubt want to avoid, but the Seahawks are a good team. I like their chances here. A battle of 1-4 NFC North teams. Maybe on complete opposite ends of the spectrum for multiple reasons. Vikings at Bears. The Vikings have lost 4 one-score games. The polar opposite of what they were last year. The Bears now sort of coming in on a hot streak. Only a 1-game win streak to call it that. But 2 games in which Justin Fields and the Bears offense looked a whole lot better. Was it because they were playing against inferior opponents, Denver's defense, and then the Commanders, maybe not the highest quality NFL opponents, but they're still NFL defenses. The Broncos, maybe not as much. But I think the Vikings are finally going to right the ship here. I think a lot of them understand a lot is kind of at risk here of going sideways. Justin Jefferson is on IR with that hamstring injury. I think they rally. I think they get a win here over the Bears. If they lose this, I think there's a very real chance we start to see some players getting moved from that Vikings team and them starting to stockpile assets for next year. So I think they rally together. I think they get the win and maybe start to claw their way back in an NFC North that I think has a clear leader, but second place is still very much up in the air. You know, some weird stuff going on with injuries this week, and the 49ers at Browns game brings another one to the forefront. This Deshaun Watson injury has been strange. He was cleared to play medically 2 weeks ago against the Ravens. He made the decision not to play. Dorian Thompson-Robinson gets the start. Doesn't look all that great, which against the Ravens defense, not a lot of first-time starters do. And even now, following their bye week, he's still not practicing, and it's looking like PJ Walker might get the start here. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe there's more to the injury than they are letting on, but I don't know if it matters if it's Deshaun Watson, Bernie Kosar, PJ Walker. I'm picking the 49ers in this game. They have looked so good. The Browns defense is for real, but so is the 49ers offense, and frankly, so is their defense. So I like the 49ers in this one. I don't know what's going on there with Deshaun Watson. Going to be really intrigued to see if he does in fact play this weekend. But moving to the 4:05 Eastern kickoff slot, got the Patriots of the East visiting the Patriots of the West, aka the Raiders. I mentioned the Patriots in the intro. I don't know what this offense is going to do. They have looked lifeless. There's a major lack of talent around Mac Jones. Mac Jones himself looks a little bit lost. I really thought bringing in Bill O'Brien would solve a lot of that, and it just hasn't. The Raiders, on the other hand, coming off a pretty close call against the Packers. There was that Marcus Peters horse collar tackle inside the 10-yard line on Christian Watson. A whole discussion around that play. Either way, Raiders get the win there. And through the history of Belichick's teams facing former coordinators, now head coaches of other teams, those former coordinators have often been able to get the win. Josh McDaniels did it in Denver. That was about the last game he won in Denver. Matt Patricia did it in Detroit. I think McDaniels gets another one here. I cannot pick the Patriots the way they have looked. Probably means they'll bounce back and win by 20, but I gotta go with the Raiders until I see something out of the Pats offense. Moving on to Lions at Buccaneers. 4 years ago, if I had said the Lions and the Buccaneers are going to be playing each other in Week 6 of the NFL season, and they would be a combined 7-2, both fan bases would have said, sign me up for that immediately. The Lions are 4-1, they have looked really good, and the Buccaneers have been surprisingly good themselves at 3-1 coming off the bye week. Getting a team like the Lions at home and coming off a bye is probably best case scenario, and the Buccaneers, really both offense and defense, have been better than I expected them to be. But at the same time, the Lions just appear to be on a roll right now, and you just have to like what Dan Campbell is building there. Ben Johnson stays as OC there. Really like what they had going on, and yet again, their offense is fantastic. But the most improved part of their team, of course, is their defense, and I think that's what gets them the win here over the Buccaneers. I think their offense is able to continue to play well against a stingier than expected Bucs defense, and I like their defense keeping the Buccaneers offense out of the end zone enough, even coming off the bye, to get that win and propel them to 5-1. So we move to what could be a very intriguing NFC West divisional matchup, Cardinals visiting the Rams. The Cardinals may be the surprise team of the NFL season, and they've still only got the one win. The Rams, on the other hand, are 2-3, but keep in mind their losses are to the 49ers, the Bengals, and the Eagles, and they've been competitive in all those games. Both teams have shown a lot of positives. I've liked what I've seen out of the Cardinals a lot, and they, for the most part, have stayed competitive as well. I think there's just more things to hang your hat on if you're the Rams here, especially with Cooper Kupp coming back. His connection with Matthew Stafford makes them really hard to defend. Throw Puka Nacua into the mix and how good their connection has been. I just think they're going to be able to put a lot of the good they've had together in one performance here and get a win over a divisional rival. Love what the Cardinals have done. Huge fan of Josh Dobbs. Really happy for him and what he's been able to do. Even though they are 1-4, they have been much better than expected. But I think the Rams do get this win and go back to 500. And moving to the final game in the 4:25 Eastern kickoff window, Eagles at Jets. The Eagles have been winning ugly games to this point. They're 5-0 and finding ways to win games. They're battle-tested, no doubt, and I think that's a major difference between this year's team and last year's team. Last year, they were blowing teams out so bad in the first halves, they barely had to play any second half football, and I think that definitely cost them against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. The Jets, on the other hand, they get a win over the Broncos. Big day for Nathaniel Hackett. The whole Jets team rallied around him. It was very evident they wanted to win that game for him. I'm not sure that type of momentum can help them in a game like this. Emotional win for sure, but the Eagles are just a different beast. And while it's been ugly thus far, and while the Jets defense is good, I don't think this game ends up being particularly close. Probably kept close through the first three quarters, and the Eagles pull away in the fourth quarter and make it a 2 or 3 score game by the end. I just like the Eagles to continue this. Again, that battle-tested nature, maybe in a game where the Jets defense does play well. Maybe there's a turnover and the Jets get on the board first. Having that battle-tested team and that belief that they'll be able to get it done, that helps a lot in a game that could maybe go unlike how they'd like it to start. So I like the Eagles winning this one. Maybe keeping it close for a while or the Jets, but not going to be enough against a team like this. What I don't think will be particularly close is the Sunday Night Football matchup. Giants visiting the Bills with basically their entire roster out for injury, including Daniel Jones. And just, they haven't looked great anyway. Going to play the Bills, who are no doubt going to be just out for blood after losing to the Jags in London. I would imagine a lot of the feelings, maybe they aren't vocalizing them, but they have to be thinking it was not the most fair situation to go into with the Jags getting to stay that extra week in London leading up to the game. They're going to be looking for a little bit of vengeance, and unfortunately the Giants, as injury-riddled as they are, happen to be standing in their paths. I don't think this will be close by halftime, and it'll maybe be an opportunity to go to bed early on Sunday. I got the Bills winning this one big. And finally, our last matchup of Week 6 on Monday Night Football, Cowboys at Chargers. The Kellen Moore Revenge Bowl, or maybe not. I really feel like for a lot of good teams, and make no mistake, the Cowboys are a good team. Great team, still up for debate, but no doubt they are a good team. When good teams get embarrassed, especially on primetime, good teams will have a tendency to bounce back and have a good performance. And the Chargers, while I do think Kellen Moore is going to have a good idea of what Dallas wants to do, both offensively and defensively, Dallas should have a pretty similar idea, at least of what Kellen Moore wants to do running an offense. And again, the Chargers just have this weird thing about them where they tend to do stuff to blow the game. Whether it's Brandon Staley, whether it's just the Chargers being the Chargers, I gotta go with the Cowboys here. I think they bounce back. I think they get a win, a needed win after losing by 32 to the 49ers. They need some confidence back. They are a very momentum-based kind of emotional team, and I think Mike McCarthy recognizes that, and I think he's going to do everything he can to prove to Jerry Jones that getting rid of Kellen Moore and allowing him to call the plays was the right move. He has no doubt been in this weird situation where his job may or may not be on the line. There's a thought that they want to get Dan Quinn in there as head coach. I think Mike McCarthy pulls out all the stops to make sure they get this win. So to recap, I've got the Chiefs beating the Broncos tonight on Thursday Night Football, got the Ravens over the Titans in London, got the Dolphins beating the Panthers, continuing that losing streak, got the Saints over the Texans, Falcons over the Commanders, got the Jags beating the Colts, got the Seahawks over the Bengals in Cincy, got the Vikings beating the Bears, 49ers over the Browns, Raiders over the Patriots, Lions beating the Buccaneers, got the Rams beating the Cardinals, the Eagles beating the Jets, got the Bills blowing out the Giants on Sunday Night Football, and finally the Cowboys beating the Chargers on Monday night. So, hoping for a good week of football. There's a couple of matchups that really intrigue me, like that Lions-Buccaneers game and some others. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What games are you most looking forward to watching? And what are your picks for this week's games? Definitely a little bit easier now that there's bye weeks and less games to choose. But anyway, that is going to do it for this video. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.